Oh, wonderful. Okay. Hello, everybody. So it's good morning here in New York. And I guess if you're further west, it's good early morning. So, what a wonderful opportunity we have in the midst of this 17-day immersion into all things health filled and well being like. We're just here at the beginning, and who knows what kinds of miracles are possible going forward. I have certainly experienced them in my own life. I grew up as an overweight kid. I was pre-diabetic at 20, and I wanted so much to be healthy. And I remember when I was 9 years old, my dad was a doctor, and I got on his desk in his big office there, and I stood on it and I climbed up high. And somehow, I don't know how I knew, but there was a book there that was called Alimentaris Humanis. And it was an old nutrition book that he had had when he was in medical school in the 1930s. And I pulled the thing down thinking this is going to fix me. And most of it was chemistry and formulas and stuff I didn't understand. But there was a chart. And it's interesting because Dr. Joel Fuhrman, that you probably know, did a chart similar to this for Whole Foods called the Andy chart, which showed the nutritional density of various foods. But this was long ago. And I was reading about these foods that give you the most power for your nutritional buck. It's just that I hadn't heard of any of them. So there were things like collard greens and Calais and Swiss chard. And then I'm thinking, oh, that's why I don't understand these. They're all from some other country. And then it got down to mustard greens. And I'm thinking, now that has to be a typo because everybody knows mustard is yellow. Then it got to spinach. And I knew what spinach was, at least in the can, because Popeye ate it and I ate it sometimes too. And I took the rest of the list to my mom, and it was just like, we don't eat that. It's like it was some kind of foreign substance. But as I was on my health journey, I learned that the fact that that was considered a foreign substance was a lot of the reason why I had so much trouble making peace with food and really making peace with life. So the short version of my story is through a combination of a 12-step program for recovery of my binge eating disorder and discovering whole food plant-based nutrition, which wasn't called that then. In those days, it was you were a vegetarian or you were vegan. And some people were dietary vegan, meaning they were just there for the health, and other people were all in ethical vegans, sometimes pretty healthy. In fact, back in the day, we didn't have a lot of vegan processed foods. So everybody that went vegan, whether it was for the animals or for their arteries, had some really great results in their own lives. And this is happening, of course, today more and more and more because this way of life is so well known. So I have been on the plant-based path for 54 years and fully plant-based, fully vegan for 40 years. And it just keeps getting better. So let us jump in to our presentation. Let me get this in slideshow. Aha. Okay. So when I started doing a program similar to this, and they all evolve, I called it When I'm 64 because I'm a big Beatles fan and I loved that song When I'm 64. Except that now, when I talk about that song, I have to do it in the past tense and talk about when I was 64 because I just turned 74. But it works. You can sing this song for when I'm 64, when I'm 84. We're going to live this wonderful way of life. And yeah, we're going to get older. It happens. Nature is sitting over there saying, okay, I'm done. You're not having any more kids. Why don't you just move on out? But we don't have to settle for that. I mean, eventually we do. Nature's going to win. But what we want to do is have this wonderful, wonderful life where we have what the medical people call mitigation of morbidity, meaning that we get to be vibrant and doing things out in the world and living the life of our own personal dreams as long as we're here. So let us proceed. So there is this term anti-aging, and you guys, I'm sure, have heard it a lot. It's certainly out there in the cosmetic world, but what they're really saying is anti-signs of ill health, anti-signs of diminishment, especially when they come too early. So I might drop that phrase here and there just because it's a phrase that people understand, but we're not anti-aging. We are so pro-aging. We are just pro-aging vibrantly and robustly and joyfully. So I want to talk first about the 4 components of aging. And I know this is my magical MEND program. We're going to get into that. But here for a little bit of background, let's just think about what age is. Now, certainly if somebody says, what is your age? You're going to give them a number. So that's the chronological aging. That's what your driver's license has to say about you. But if you've ever been to a high school reunion, you know that people age at really different rates. A lot of that is genetic. A lot of it is just what happens in life. And, sometimes in the health world, we can get a little bit judgmental. We can say, oh, so-and-so isn't looking so good. I wonder what they're doing. I wonder what they're eating. I wonder if they fell off the healthy wagon. You know what? Let's just leave that behind because things happen. People that have really difficult lives, people who go through stressful experiences, it affects their health. It shows in their appearance. So we don't want to be judging ourselves by what the mirror is telling us. We just want to live in a way that's going to make everything better. So this is one of my role models, Carol Channing. She's a wonderful actress, Broadway and movies. She's known most for Hello, Dolly. And she died a couple of years ago at 98. Now, Carol has an interesting story in terms of chronological age because she was a Christian Scientist. And in Christian Science is a belief system that everything that happens on Earth is a reflection of ultimate reality. And so matter per se isn't really real. So people who are Christian Scientists don't talk about their age because it's like, it's only the body and it's not real anyway. So why should I talk about my age? But when Carol Channing was 85 and still dancing on Broadway, she decided, I'm going to start telling people my age. And just like Carol, you can do whatever you want with your chronological age. You can blast it all over the internet, or you can keep it to yourself. That's your own business. But of all the aspects of aging, it's the one that is least relevant. Rest in peace, Carol. Then the next component is cosmetic aging, and that's how we appear to others. And of course, we all want to appear well at every age. We can also get really obsessed about how people look. And the fact is, things change over time. So this woman is getting herself injected, and it's to each their own. And what you want to do and what you can afford to do, God bless you. But there's so many things that we can do, even for appearance, that are more natural and cheaper. So we're going to focus more on those kinds of things. So I want to share this Vogue magazine cover. It's from about 15 years ago. And I always think that I should retire this slide because these are the Presley women, Elvis's widow, granddaughter, and daughter from left to right. And we did lose his daughter, sadly, in the past couple of years. I believe she had a reaction to a medical procedure. But the reason I find this cover so interesting is I remember seeing it on a newsstand here in New York City when it first came out. And my first thought was, it's 3 models. And they're all like, I don't know, 30. But then when you look closely and you realize who this is, we're talking about a grandmother, a granddaughter, and a mother. And with enough, help from the cosmetic and plastic surgery industry and fabulous lighting and great makeup, it's like we've made the then 17-year-old look 30 and the whatever 40-year-old look 30 and the 60-year-old look 30. And that's interesting that we can do that. But I don't know about you, but I have a daughter, and I'm glad that people know who's the mom and who's the daughter. Now, one thing before we leave our little intro here on the cosmetic aspects of things, I want to talk about hydration, because the one thing that you can do immediately to start looking younger is to hydrate yourself regularly and consistently. I had a cat named Henrietta. She lived to be 23, but when she was in her later years, she wasn't looking so good. Her fur was a little bit stiff and she was kind of losing weight. And, she was a 20-year-old cat. And the vet suggested that we start giving her subcutaneous fluids. And we did that twice a week. And people would come to visit and they would say, "What happened to Henrietta? She looks like a young cat." And it was really remarkable, the difference of 20-year-old cat well hydrated versus 20-year-old cat not well hydrated. And the same thing works for us. So when we talk about hydration, the first thing people think of is chugging lots of water. And it's great to drink water. But the best water comes in the plants. Now, I'll bet some of you in this wonderful room full of 121 people have been around people who are so interested in health that some people call them health nuts. And when you're around this demographic, you're likely to hear water arguments. And people are saying things like, you should only drink distilled water because it's the only pure water. Otherwise, you're going to be getting minerals and they're going to attach to your joints. They're going to exacerbate arthritis. And then other people are saying, no, you must drink mineral water. You must drink this water that has taken the minerals from the earth because we have mineral deficient diets. And then you've got the people that say, no, you're both wrong. You need to have alkaline water. And by the way, I'm selling the machines. So with all due respect to all the waters, the water that comes in fresh fruits and fresh vegetables is naturally distilled by nature. It is mineral rich with organic minerals that nobody could say is doing anything bad. And it's alkaline. So one more reason to eat lots of fruits and vegetables. And it's also nice to get yourself in a nice moist environment, at least some of the time. Not necessarily that everybody has to move to Portland, but things like steam baths and hot baths and going out walking in the rain. Wonderful thing. This book, The Water Secret, I really like it. It's not a vegetarian book. I don't agree with him on diet. But one of the things that I've learned in all these years in this work is that sometimes you just take what you like and leave the rest. This whole wonderful health movement that we're part of is not some kind of cult where there's a whole list of rules and you have to take them chapter and verse and buy everything. You take what resonates, you respect what doesn't resonate, and leave it somewhere on a back burner. And maybe one of these days you might want to look at that again. But you do what your instincts are telling you. And if it doesn't quite work, you try something else, because there's a lot of great information out there and nobody is going to do all of it. And sometimes, like in the case of this book, as an ethical vegan, I'm never going to eat the way this man eats, but that's okay. That's what he does. And we take what we like and we leave the rest. So for looking fabulous and dewy and glowy and all those wonderful things all your life long, there are some foods that your skin just wants to eat up. And we're going to talk about some of these and why they're so great. So we've got the oily foods first, the avocado, walnuts, sunflower, sesame, hemp seeds, and there are others. But this is the kind of foods that's going to give you that moistness. I know a lot of whole food plant-based people completely avoid extracted oils. There's absolutely no reason why anybody has to have extracted oils in their diet, but we do need some lubrication from these wonderful whole plant foods. And of course, walnuts, hemp seeds, and also flax seeds are high in omega-3 fatty acids, which are hard to get, and they're often outstripped by the other omega fatty acids. So getting those threes in is very important for brain health, primarily, also for heart health. Then in the next group, sweet potatoes, mangoes, papayas, melons, we're talking about beta carotene. We're talking about foods that are orange and yellow, and beta carotene is a precursor to vitamin A, so great for vision and also really good for skin. In fact, they did a really famous study where they took Caucasian people and gave them carrot juice daily for a period of time. And then there was another control group where they didn't give them any carrot juice. And then they brought in other people to look at photographs and rate these people on attractiveness. And the carrot juice drinkers evidently had this kind of golden glow that the other people didn't have. So that's the beta carotene. Now, pomegranates, grapes, we're talking purple grapes, cherries, these are anthocyanins. This is a kind of phytochemical. Phyto means plant, and there are chemicals in plants that nature put there to protect the plant. But when we eat them, we get the protection too. And it happens that these kind of blue, purple foods have this anthocyanin that skin absolutely loves. Now, berries are fabulous. And the photograph here is wild blueberries. If you've ever gone berry picking and you pick the regular blueberries, you don't have to bend over very far because they're on bushes. But these little wild blueberries grow down on the ground. And they are tough little berries because when you're growing on the ground, everybody can get you. So they have evolved over millennia to be able to resist and withstand so much. If that area is completely burned out, those wild blueberries are going to come back the next season stronger than ever. Now, wild blueberries don't ship very well when they're fresh. So the way that we can get them primarily is frozen. You can also get them dried and powdered, but frozen at any supermarket, Whole Foods, Trader Joe's. And some people say, oh, but I want to eat everything fresh. I don't like it that it's been frozen. I get it. Fresh is fabulous, but frozen is actually really cool. It does very, very little damage to food. Wild blueberries are actually more nutritious frozen because that's an assault and they come back. They're an adaptogen and they come back stronger than ever with more good stuff for you. So berries, fabulous. Red and yellow peppers, strawberries, and citrus. We're talking vitamin C. So you've all heard of vitamin C serum for the skin. You want to have the vitamin C on the inside as well. And apples have something in them called pectin. That's like if you cook apples or if you're going to make apple butter or something like that, there's this kind of sticky substance. And that also is a skin protector that helps your collagen, which we start to lose in our 30s. So here are some top hacks for looking good. So sunscreen, and you want to use a natural sunscreen. We're going to be talking later about how toxic the environment is for almost all of us these days. And so anything that you can do that isn't going to put a chemical in your body that you don't need is a great thing. So with sunscreen, it's just as you got to remember to do it. So lots of times, and I'm guilty of this, I'll put it on in the morning and then I'll just go out and live my life. But it only lasts for a couple of hours. And also, you want to put it on the parts of your body that you don't think about. We look in the mirror, we see this, we forget we've got all the rest. So I live in New York City now. I've lived here for 24 years, and I almost never drive. But I used to drive a lot. I come from Kansas City, Missouri, and I was just always in my car. And so to this day, when I look at my hands, it's the left hand that's got the freckles and the age spots, way more than the right hand, simply because of all that sun exposure that I had years ago. So you want to protect your hands, you want to protect this upper chest area, hats, sunglasses, gloves. You can even have fun online by looking up sun protective clothing. And, we could get to the point of overkill, but I do like the idea of a wonderful brimmed hat with that sun protection part of it. Just because, why not? You only get one face. Then protect your collagen with no tobacco. I'm sure you're not using tobacco, alcohol, sugar, processed foods, and we already talked about limited UV exposure. So with something like alcohol, you decide, do you want to consume that in moderation? And that means 1 drink a day for women, 2 drinks for men, or do you just want to let it go? There's this wonderful movement called Sober Curious, where people just experiment with not drinking and see if their life is better. So again, this is not the morality police. You live your life, you enjoy your life as you want to enjoy it. But there is a connection between breast cancer and alcohol, so that for women, there's really no known low level. So we can say moderate is 1 drink a day. Not sure that that's necessarily okay for everybody. So do your research, live your life. Vitamin C, we talked about. And if you use a retinol, that's put your moisture on first, then put the retinol, because that can increase your sun sensitivity, more moisturizer, and always sunscreen. The fruit acids take some of that dry, flaky kind of skin away. And you can notice this not just on the face, but as you get older, certainly on the shins and the ankle area, your skin gets thinner and it starts to kind of flake. And, you take off your yoga pants and you see, what's all this dead skin in here? Well, that's because we need to exfoliate. We need to exfoliate our whole body. When you're really, really young, like a toddler, like a little kid, you don't need to do that. They have this wonderful skin. It's all taking care of itself. And a little bit later, we need some help. And then, of course, never go to bed with a dirty face, and going to bed early will help that. So these are some books you might want to take a look at. This first one, Younger by the Day, is a classic from me. I wrote it back in 2012. It's a day book, 365 suggestions. Anti-Aging Hacks is by a wonderful plant-based author and journalist, Karen Asp. It's about 101 fabulous suggestions for looking younger. And Ageless Vegan by Tracy, I'm blanking on, there she is, Tracy McWhorter and her wonderful mother, Mary McWhorter. They wrote this book when they had both been vegan for 30 years. And Tracy was 50 and her mom was 80. So this works for everybody all the time. Now, I'm going to be sprinkling throughout this presentation role models, and certainly Tracy McWhorter and her mom are in that category. And so is Ellen Jaffe Jones. She is nationally ranked as a runner and fabulous, amazing woman. So the third component of aging is physiological. And this is what we're really going to be delving into when we get into aspects of the MEND program. But there's so much we can do. There is so much we can do to take that chronological age that we talked about and have a physiological age that is a lot younger. So there are different theories about aging, and one is about telomeres. Telomeres are the caps on the tips of our chromosomes. People talk about them as being like the plastic tips on the end of shoelaces. And we're born with these. But every time a cell divides, we're going to lose a little bit of that cap. And that telomere gets shorter and shorter. Longer telomeres are correlating with better health, longer life. So the cool thing about what you're going to be hearing for all these 17 days is there's very little contradiction. There's a little, you can always find something to debate about, but generally speaking, the bad guys are the bad guys and the good guys are the good guys. In terms of telomeres, it's meat, dairy, refined grains, the white flour, white rice, that kind of thing, most of the cereal that comes in boxes, processed sugar. This all correlates to shorter telomeres. When vegetables, fruits, spices, herbs, beans, green tea correlate with longer telomeres. So what's going to be cool is we're not going to move on in this presentation and say, well, for this part of your body, for this physiological activity, you probably need to be having meat, dairy, and refined grains. No, never. And the plant foods are always going to be the all-stars. And then aspects of healthy living, lifestyle medicine, regular meditation, exercise, avoiding tobacco, and other toxins. Now, another theory of aging is the free radical theory. And this is the one where we hear about oxidative stress. And you got these free radicals running around. These are molecules in search of molecules, and they damage our mitochondria, and that's where our cells get their juju. So we end up with these age-related problems. And nowadays, younger and younger people are having some of these age-related issues, but we don't want them at any age. So what do? How do we combat this oxidative stress? Well, if you're slicing apples, you're going to make a wonderful apple crisp, let's say. You might want to put some lemon juice on those apples so they don't turn all brown before you can finish layering them in your baking dish. That is fighting oxidative stress, because that brown that you see on the sliced apple is oxidation. It's kind of the rusting that happens inside our bodies. So what do? We take antioxidants in a very yummy form of eating fruits, vegetables, herbs, spices, green teas. So in case you're wondering about the difference between herbs and spices, herbs are the dried leaves of certain plants, and the spices are usually the dried roots, and they're all great. There was a time when I had my Christmas spices, and I'd get them out in December to make my cookies and my mulled cider. So the allspice, the mace, the cinnamon, all that stuff, it just wasn't a part of my regular life. Now it is so a part of my regular life. You can make an Indian chocolate shake. This was inspired by a wonderful book called The Ayurvedic Vegan Kitchen. And you put in your non-dairy milk and your banana and some flax, and then you put in these wonderful spices that you would never think of putting in a blender drink. So the ones I mentioned, cinnamon, cardamom, allspice, nutmeg, ginger, and it's this wonderful, wonderful morning drink it's a smoothie, but it's going to warm you up because those spices are warming. So spices are cool. We'll talk about them again later on, but they bear repeating. Here's another role model of mine, Dr. Bishi's 93. And I think now that 58 years raw might be a little bit not so long. I think it's 60 years now. And I'm not a raw food person, but I really admire them. And when you're trying to eat raw food, or mostly raw food, then when you cheat, it means you're having beans and brown rice, which is great food too. So Dr. Bishi's a wonderful man. We now do Main Street Vegan Academy, which Michael mentioned, that in a Zoom course, but we used to do it in person. And he came here to speak one day, and we had a 15-minute break, and people kind of went out to stretch their legs. Well, he actually ran around the block. He wasn't 93 then, he was probably like 88. And then he came back and taught an hour-and-a-half class standing. And then he did an hour-long podcast, beautiful, cognitive, everything perfectly working. And again, we all have genetics. We're not all going to be outliers in our 90s. But the idea of building this physical form from life-giving foods makes a huge, huge difference. And a friend of mine was visiting Dr. Bishi the other day and posted on social media that he is still up every morning running along the beach. Now we're going to look at attitudinal aging. And this is one that we sometimes forget, especially if we're health people and we're interested in nutrition and we're interested in exercise. We kind of forget that the more subtle stuff that you can't see is extremely important, if for no other reason that when you're in a positive mood, when you feel good about yourself, you want to take care of yourself. And it's sometimes a catch-22. I'll bet out of all these people that we have gathered here, we're 148 now, that some of you relate to the fact that there are days when you feel good about yourself and you feel good about your life, and you want to get up in the morning and do your yoga and your meditation and your workout. You want to make a beautiful, wonderful breakfast. You want to pack a fabulous lunch to take to work. It's just natural. But then there are other days. There are days when you're thinking, this is just too hard. I mean, I've got this going on at work, and this is going on with a family member, and I'm worried about this little twerky thing going on in my body. And it's just like, oh, okay, can't do that. So you want to have the wonderful attitude, the wonderful inner balance to motivate your other healthy practices, as well as just to be happy. Because sometimes I think we're working so hard these days that we forget we're supposed to be happy. We deserve to be happy. There's not only nothing wrong with it, there is everything right with it. So one thing we want to do is delight in the age we are. And people lots of times apologize for being older. That's so silly. All it means is we've been circling the sun a few more times than some other people. So we want to be happy with our age. And if there are things in our life that we're not happy with, we need to do what we can to work on them and to fix them. And we're going to talk about some of that when we get to the MEND program. Overall, a whole lot of the attitude piece is about living for something bigger than you. Now, certainly, veganism is one of those things that you can get really excited about, but there is so much out there. It's just like, look at the world, pick a problem. What speaks to your heart? What would you really give anything to change in this world? And lots of times we've got something like that, but we think, oh, I'm just one person. What can I do? But you can be part of all these other people who are doing it. Sometimes people will say to people like me who do a lot of work for animals, well, why aren't you out there doing something for people? Well, actually, going vegan because it helps the planet and it helps world hunger and it does all these great things. It helps people too. But the people that ask me why I'm not doing stuff for people aren't doing stuff for people. They aren't doing stuff for anybody. So once you get involved in doing something great, it doesn't matter what it is. It's all about what a teacher of mine used to call the upward progression of the universe. So we want to get out there and make things better. Here's another inspiring woman, Karen Calabrese. She's 75 now. She's probably about 70 in this picture. And just beautiful woman, her whole life, super healthy, super cool. She was in a very, very serious car accident about 10 years ago. And it was the kind of thing where for a lot of people, it would be, this is it. I just can't come back from this. The injuries were too great. She totally came back. And this is post-accident photograph. So now we're going to get into the MEND program. The second part of the MEND program is exercise. And so I'm feeling like since we're going to be sitting here together for a while, that this would be a good time to just kind of get up and just move about just a bit. I am going to see, will it let me stop my video? Okay, so I'm going to stretch and I'm going to ask you to stretch and stand up if that's possible for you. And just climb an invisible rope. Just get out of that mid-body, a little bit of climbing, and let that go. And then put your hands right in the front of your upper thighs where your hip bend is. And just bend from the waist and only go as far as is comfortable for you. Tighten your abs. We're not going to bend all the way over. We're not going to touch our toes. We're just going to bend until your chest is parallel with the floor. And you'll probably feel a little stretch in the back of your thighs and that hamstring muscle. And then tighten your thigh muscles and tighten your gluteals and just squeeze yourself up, keeping your back straight, squeezing up like you're squeezing a tube of toothpaste. And then bring your arms up overhead again, inhaling. Inhale, inhale, inhale. And let it go, maybe with a nice sigh. Ah. And then one more time. Inhale. And then let it go. Ah. Okay. Now let's be seated. And there we go. Okay. This is the Magical MEND program. Meditation, exercise, nourishment, and detoxification. Now, I don't know if you had a grandmother or a great-grandmother like I did who could sew. It's kind of a lost art, but my grandmother could take any kind of ripped garment, anything that's got a hole or, missing some kind of part, and with her needle and thread, she could make it like new. In many cases, you couldn't even tell that that garment had been mended. And it occurred to me, thinking about what she could do with a needle and thread, what if we could mend our lives? Mend our ways is the phrase, so that it would kind of hit a delete button on the stuff that we used to eat and drink and do. Well, there is a way. And this is it encapsulated: meditation, exercise, nourishment, and detox. So we are going to jump into that. Now, when I talk about meditation, it's not necessarily formal meditation, although that's what the scientific studies have been done on. But I think it's whatever floats your boat. So anything that is internal and focus, because meditation is really nothing but focusing your mind on a single point. It's a concentration practice. And when you get good at it, and that concentration no longer requires effort, then it becomes meditation. So you've got the list here of all the amazing things that it does, but I would like to draw your attention to the final one where it says makes you younger. So there is a wonderful study and others that are similar, but this one I love because it's so clear, where they looked at people who had been meditating regularly for 5 years or more and compared them to people who didn't meditate. And they found that the meditators were 12 years younger physiologically than the people who didn't meditate. So what they were looking at in terms of physiological aging was body mass index, muscle to fat. They looked at cholesterol, HDL and LDL. They looked at joint flexibility, at hearing, at vision. And in all of these ways, these meditators averaged 12 years younger. So let's do a little mental exercise. Subtract 12 from your current age. Okay, got it? Regardless of your age, if you're 30 or if you're 90, subtracting 12 is a big deal. They say that when you stop smoking, you get back 7 years. This is sitting quietly twice a day, and you get 12 years of health. So I think it's worth looking into, don't you? This is my sweet dog, Forbes, who's no longer with us, but in spirit. You can see him behind me too. So it's very simple. Sometimes people are intimidated because it sounds foreign, or it sounds like maybe it's something religious, or it's something you have to take an expensive course to do. You really don't, because the fact is you meditate a lot. Like, for example, if you've ever done any kind of adventure sport, if you've ever driven a motorcycle, these things where you have to focus or there could be a dangerous outcome, that's the same process that's meditation. It's really just focus. So you're going to set aside the time. That's the most important thing. Anything that you want to do, you'll do if you make it an appointment. If somebody else was involved, you'd show up, but you're involved. So show up. So morning and late afternoon are wonderful times to do this. So you find your time and you sit, and you can sit cross-legged like a yogi. And lots of times when I do that, I still want to lean against something. So I'll sit on my bed, lean against the wall or sitting on the floor, just something behind you. It's good to strengthen your back. We're going to be talking about exercise in a minute. But when you're meditating, you want to be really, really comfortable. In fact, the whole practice of yoga asana, the movement parts of yoga, were developed so that people could spend time in meditation. So you close your eyes and then you watch your breath. Now, to just watch your breath and not do anything else is a kind of meditation. It's called Vipassana or insight meditation. It's a Buddhist system. I need a little bit more entertainment. And so I like to do a mantra meditation, which means using a word or a phrase. So if you're not into the yoga thing and you're not cool with something like Om Shanti, that is absolutely fine. How about all is well? You get a little affirmation action going with the meditation. So you inhale all is, and you exhale well. And chances are your monkey mind is going to say, well, all is not well because you've got this problem and this problem and this problem. All is well. The monkey mind will say, well, that's what you think. Haven't you listened to CNN today? Don't you know how awful everything is in the world? All is well. And over time, that mind that is chattering is just going to quiet down. Now, does it mean that you have no thoughts? A lot of people say, oh, meditation, that's when you're not thinking anything. You're always thinking something. That is the nature of the mind. That's why we have the breath or the mantra, the word or the phrase as a point of focus. Because focusing on nothing is saying, don't think of a pink elephant. It's not going to work. So how long? Most of these studies, almost all the early studies were done on transcendental meditation, which is 20 minutes in the morning, 20 minutes in the late afternoon or early evening. And I used to think if I had 40 minutes a day free, I wouldn't need to meditate. I'd already be calm and peaceful. So work it out for yourself. Maybe 5 minutes to start with, if you've never done it before, is all you can handle. So do 5 minutes, but do it every day. Do it every day for a month. Morning, ideally. You can't handle twice a day. Start with morning. 5 minutes for 30 days, 10 minutes, 30 days. Then 15 for maybe 60 days and see if you can work up to 20. It's a wonderful, wonderful practice to put into your life. So now we're going to move on to exercise. And this was me about 5 years ago doing aerial yoga. And it looks kind of impressive. It's pretty easy, but it's so much fun. And that's the main thing about exercise. It's all good, but you have to do it. And I don't know about you, but I was never somebody who liked it. Even as a kid, I hated gym class. I didn't even like recess. I always wanted to stay in and, do the blackboards. But I have learned over time there are certain kinds of movements that I absolutely love. Aerial yoga is one of them. There's something called gyrotonics that you can look up if you haven't experienced it. They call it yoga for dancers. It's wonderful equipment. It's like undulating and the movements are kind of rounded. It's fabulous. And then there's just working out. And we're going to talk about some of those things and how we can incorporate them into our lives. So there's all sorts of things we can do, and there are all sorts of things we should be doing. And I'm sure this is review for health-minded people. So cardio, that's where we're walking or running or doing the treadmill or dancing or skating or swimming, basically keeping the heart rate going. And you want that rate, which of course you can look up and find out the training heart rate for your age. But you want that to be where you can carry on a conversation, but you still know you're getting a little bit of extra beats in there that you don't in a sedentary life. I actually long ago interviewed Dr. Kenneth Cooper. He invented the term aerobics. And my daughter always teases me, you were alive before they had aerobics. Yeah, well, and Dr. Cooper said, all exercise is good, but only one will save your life. That's cardiovascular exercise. And that is true to a large extent, but not quite. Because as we move down to strength training, this gets so very important when we get to be a little bit older, because the body tends to lose muscle mass, it tends to lose bone density as we age. And strength training counteracts both of those. And when I was saying that what Dr. Cooper said wasn't quite 100% accurate, it's that when older people break a hip, it very often leads to death because the recovery is difficult. It causes other things to go south. So we really, really want to be strong. Very often when people think about strength training, they think all upper body, I'm going to do this. I'm going to bench press, however many pounds. For me, it's like 20, but that's what I do. And it's a strength training for me. Some of the guys, they've got 200. Okay, we're all different. If it's going to be something that gives you resistance, that's great. But you also want to do lower body. You don't want to forget lower body because that's what's going to keep you from the broken hip. That and a wonderful high greenery diet. We're going to talk about that later. And then there's flexibility. And of course, yoga is just perfect for that. But if you're not a yoga person, just stretch. And don't let it go, because very often if you're taking some kind of cardio class or another kind of class at a gym, and they do a tiny little bit of stretching at the end, a lot of people will leave. You'll see them, putting their equipment away, rolling up their mats while other people are stretching. Bad idea to leave, because this is part of your healing and part of your recovery after exercise. And all of these kinds of ways of being have their physiological component, what they're doing for the body. But because everything in life is connected to everything else, we're in this wonderful holistic kind of experience. So with cardio, which is also called endurance exercise, you can think about that as also giving you endurance for your life, to just be able to keep going, to be able to face things that are difficult. And I can tell you from the stage of life I'm in, it does not get any easier. Whoever said old age is not for sissies was a genius. And so doing that cardio gives you that sort of inner strength that when you've got to do something else hard and you don't think you have it in you, you know that you spent 45 minutes on that treadmill and you can do this other hard thing too. Strength training, the same. We want to be strong to face life. There was a time in my life I was doing a lot of strength training, and I'd also been taking women's self-defense classes. And I was driving with my daughter. We were still in Kansas City. And I looked out the corner of my eye, and this man was punching this woman right there on the sidewalk in front of everybody. And all the passersby were like going, but nobody was doing anything to help the victim. So I said to my daughter, you stay here. I'm locking the doors. Pull the car over. And I go up to this guy. And I hadn't noticed from the car that he was really, really big. But, I was there. So I had to do what I came to do. So feeling strong, I looked up at Goliath and said as loud as I could, cut it out. And never before or since have I seen speechless in a human. this great big bully was going. He couldn't speak because he was so shocked that somebody who looks like me would walk up to somebody who looks like him to protect another person. Now, end of that story. The woman walked over to him, got up on her tiptoes, and kissed him on the cheek. It's like, okay, it's one of those, I'm out of here. So I left. But those passersby that didn't do anything saw that. My daughter saw that. And the woman saw that. And I always like to think that one day she left the guy. But this is all because there was a strong feeling within me. I'm not saying to endanger yourself. I'm not saying to be a vigilante, but just as an illustration of how differently you can approach life when you feel strong. Flexibility also has a wonderful metaphysical and metaphorical aspect to it, because we're getting flexible so that we heal better, so that we're not overtaxing joints. We're just moving within our beautiful range and maybe improving that range just a tiny little bit or extending it. We don't have to improve it because we're fine the way we are. But we want to grow older like a cat. Think of a cat and think of a dog. You know, you pick up a cat and that cat is just so flexible. That whole spine is just gonna, you know, the cat's very flexible. And dogs, different kind of anatomy. You pick up your dog and he's just, you know, right there. Well, we want to be more cat-like as we age so that we can move with the exigencies of life physically and otherwise. Then we've got incidental exercise. And that means you just get up and do it yourself. So we know that standing, coming next, is really important. That's why we stood and did our little bit of movement a bit ago. You want to stand every hour. If you're working at a desk, working at a computer, you can even set a clock for 10 minutes to the hour or 5 minutes to the hour. And you just get up and do something. You can walk down the hall, you can climb some stairs. That's really good. You can get some water. You can check in on somebody, make a phone call standing up. In fact, a lot of people have the rule that anytime they're talking on a phone, they do it standing. And then something that we didn't get on this list is balance training. Because again, especially as we get older, we're talking about we want to have a strong lower body so we don't break a hip in a fall. Well, how about we don't fall at all? And there's no guarantees on that. You know, I live in New York City where the sidewalks are kind of uneasy and a lot of uneven in a lot of places. And sometimes, you know, you just trip. It happens at any age. But we don't want to do it any more than we have to, especially when we get older. And one way to do that is with working on your balance. So a good yoga teacher can help you with balance exercises, so can a physical therapist, but it's really just as simple as standing on one foot. You can do that when you brush your teeth. You can do it when you're stirring a pot. And if you get good at it, then you close your eyes. Maybe not when you're stirring the pot, if you're there by a hot stove, but when you're brushing your teeth, you could certainly try closing your eyes because balance is largely visual. And so closing the eyes makes it more difficult. Or just Google balance exercises, but do some of those every day because you really want to be somebody that is not going to fall down today or 30 years from now. So this is the skinny on exercise. You've got to do it. Now, when I say an hour a day, of course, take a day off. Certainly in between your strength training, you're going to need to take some time off so that those muscles can recover. So if you talk to a bodybuilder or somebody who's really invested in this, they'll do their upper body one day and they'll do their lower body the next day. So there's always a day in between. So if you do your whole body, you want to give yourself a couple of days and then do it over again, couple of days, do your strength training again. Now, your cardio, you really can do every day. And you read so many different recommendations for how long you should spend doing that. Sometimes you'll see 20 minutes. Well, 20 minutes is better than sitting on a couch. But when you get up towards an hour, that's when you really see the benefits. But by all means, if you haven't been working out, if it just seems like, oh my God, this is too much, start with 20 minutes. Start with what you'll do. Much, much, much better to do 20 minutes every day for the rest of your life than to do an hour for 3 weeks and fall away. So be within the realm of realistic, but also understand that getting it up to an hour a day is really where we're seeing the tremendous health benefits. So how do we do this in a busy, busy life? I mean, we've got jobs, we've got 2 jobs, we've got side hustles, we've got kids, we've got parents, we've got, so it's difficult. So maybe it won't be an hour every day. You can also divide it up. You know, they used to say you had to do it all in a chunk, and now we know that's absolutely not true. So you can get up in the morning and you can go out and walk. It's an excellent habit to get into for so many reasons beyond the exercise benefit, because getting that natural light early in the day is going to help you sleep at night. It's going to help your mood. If you've got kind of the seasonal affective disorder, or if you're just kind of going through a gray slump, you know, you've got Eeyore, like with the cloud hanging over your head, getting out in the early morning is just so important. So we know what exercise does for us, all these great things for the heart, for the bones, metabolic health. That means you're going to be able to be processing your food, processing your energy better all through the day. And you're going to have a better mood, a better self-concept. So it's one of those catch-22 things where they say that regular exercise in some studies has shown to be as effective for even clinical depression as prescription medication. But when you're feeling awful, it's really hard to exercise. So what can you do? What can you do to get there? Sometimes I think that I have suffered for much of my life with a condition that I named, and I call it activity resistance disorder. So I thought if it was something that could have initials, maybe insurance would one day pay to get help with it. But activity resistance disorder means I don't want to do it. I don't want to get up, because I must say the things that make me happy the most are conversation, reading, watching a really wonderful movie, all the seated pastimes. But you know what? My body didn't evolve to sit. My body evolved to move. So we have to do it. Some interesting new information that exercise actually changes the gut microbiome. It raises the levels of a coenzyme that determines the speed of the aging process. It switches on longevity genes that extends those telomeres we talked about. This is amazing. This is miraculous. And here's my favorite. These are a couple of books that I absolutely love. You can really read either one of them. They're very similar. They're by the same authors. They just did one that they geared particularly to women, because the first one was more geared to men. Again, not a vegetarian book. I don't pay attention to the parts they write about food. There's not much in them about foods, because these are books about exercise. And here's the deal. In addition to all the stuff we've always heard about how exercise is so wonderful, it's all about the message that the brain gets, because in our prehistoric past, life was hard. A lot of people didn't make it through the winter. They would go in the cave and they would huddle and they would hope that they could make it through. So this is giving the brain the message of, oh, that person's not moving. So why should I mount an immune response? Why should I do anything to take care of this person? They're on their way out. But when you're moving, you're giving the brain an entirely different message. So some people would say, well, yeah, but those people were starving. If you are lying on the couch eating chips, lots of chips, even if you're lying on the couch eating kale chips, the body is sending the brain the message, don't don't secrete the hormones this person needs. Don't trouble yourself. This body that is sedentary is not long for this world. So we want to give it the other message. And that means we're going to get out, we're going to walk in the morning and maybe half an hour. And then maybe after work, you might take a dance class. You might go out dancing. You might take a bike ride. Incorporate this stuff into your life. Start small if you need to start small, but by all means, get it done. Now we're moving on to nourishment. And you're going to be hearing so much about this over the next 16 days that I'll just give you some of my specific ideas. We were all brought up balanced meal. And we know what that looked like. I mean, the posters in my school cafeteria were like a pork chop, mashed potatoes, green beans with bacon in them, a glass of milk. And that's not what we know now. So this is it. This is the new balanced meal. We got fruits, veggies, whole grains, legumes. So there's no fruit here, although I think some of those little red pieces might be peppers and they're botanically fruits. But heck, we could eat this meal and then have some fruit for dessert. So you want veggies and you want greens. It's almost like they need to be two groups. All vegetables are wonderful. Greens are spectacular. So you want to be a lean, clean greens machine. And you can just read through some of these amazing study results. Harvard University, they say 2 daily servings decrease the risk of heart attack and stroke by 20%. But some of our plant-based doctors, our lifestyle medicine doctors are saying, oh, you need more than that. 4 or 5 servings, which is just like, oh, that seems overwhelming, but not really. Because if you eat a really big salad, that takes care of a lot of servings. I get my salad bowls at restaurant supply houses because nowhere else do they have bowls big enough for the tossing and then the amount of salad that I want to eat in the summertime. In the winter, I'm more likely to do beans and greens, where I'll just get in a big pot and saute onion, garlic, and then whatever other vegetables I want, bunch of greens, throw in some beans and spices. It's wonderful. Or sometimes I will do a lean, clean greens steamer. And I'll start with starchy vegetable, maybe a yellowfin potato or sweet potatoes. And then I'll have the greens that I'll add a little bit later, broccoli, collards, kale, whatever I've got. If it's going to be spinach, I add that at the very end and just cook it a minute or two. And then some beans, and it's all good. And spices, of course. So just read through this. It's stunning. When you think about some of these ideas, like why we need exercise, why greens are so important. They're tiny little things. On the one hand, we look at what goes on in the medical system and these giant hospital complexes and their amazing, expensive machinery. And when that is necessary, thank goodness we have it. But look what we also have. Look what we have cheap and available to us. And I do want to mention this last thing. Some people do have trouble digesting certain foods, particularly when you get older. But for other people, it's just a lifelong thing. Their gut is just not as powerful as somebody else's. And a lot of times people will give up on being plant-based because of this. So you want to be real gentle with those people and not say, what's wrong with you? Because what's wrong with them is probably their tummy hurt. And so if you have that kind of thing going on, you want to work with yourself and see what's going to make it possible for you to eat some of these foods. So you start with small amounts. You pay attention to how you do with certain foods. So for example, the cabbage family, broccoli, kale, Brussels sprouts, they have an antioxidant that you can't get anywhere else, sulforaphane, anti-cancer, miraculous substance. But if it hurts every time you eat them, it's not going to be that great for you. So you want to figure out ways to get these in you that you can handle now while you're building up your digestive capacity. So all these foods we're talking about are prebiotics because they have the fiber that the good gut bacteria like to eat. And so just every meal is helping. So if you're having a problem before you get to the strong digestive point, then figure out ways that you can eat these that work for you. So I am a big fan of green juices. I know some people will say, well, that's not whole food. I know that, but it's the best part of what's in the greens. And yes, we need fiber, and most people don't get enough of it. But we get a lot of fiber the way we eat. And with green juices, I always feel like I am getting an infusion of youthfulness and vitality. And if you can't eat raw kale or steamed kale or sauteed kale, you can probably manage kale in a juice with cucumber, maybe a little bit of apple, some lemon. Lemon and green juice makes all the difference. So that's one way. Another way is to cook the greens. And as much as raw food has all that prana and that life force energy, it's more difficult to digest than when you've cooked the food and you've broken down some of that fiber, and maybe a smaller amount at first. And if you do want to do like a raw kale salad, just massage the heck out of that kale. You put it in the bowl, you put in your acid, your vinegar or your lemon. If you do use a little olive oil, that's up to you. And if you do use a tiny little bit of salt, I am basically salt-free at this point of my life, but the chemical action of a little bit of salt when you're massaging those kale leaves, it cooks them without cooking them. It breaks down some of that tough fibrous material so that if you couldn't eat them before, you can eat them now. So it's really worth working with a dietitian, a nutritionist, somebody who can help you figure out ways to get the greens in your diet. Now, we talk about protein usually to say, it's not a big deal. Just don't worry about it, because protein is in everything that grows up out of the ground. And if you're eating a varied natural food diet, you're going to get plenty of it. However, older people do require a little bit more. Not a tremendous amount more. They can absolutely, certainly be plant-based, just a little bit more, simply because it's harder for older people to metabolize all nutrients, and because there is this breakdown of the muscle that happens as we age. So it's not difficult. It just means you make sure that in every meal you have some kind of concentrated protein. So beans, lentils, soy foods, even soy milk. You know, you can read those labels. I know we don't do a lot of label reading because we're not buying a lot of food in packages. But if you use non-dairy milk, you can just look at the various labels. What's the difference in the calcium? What's the difference in the protein? They vary widely. And soy milk is nice and substantial and does have protein. Quinoa, wonderful, has all the amino acids, hummus, peanut butter, and even greens, which are not considered a high protein food because they're low in calories, but per calorie, leafy greens have more protein than beef. And I do recommend this book, Plant Powered Protein, by two wonderful dietitians, Brenda Davis and Vasanto Molina, and the recipes are to live for. So, food and inflammation. We always hear about inflammation these days, but it's kind of hard to know what it is. How do we get it? And on top of that, there's all kinds of misinformation and people that have different dietary philosophies. It's so weird. Nutrition is supposed to be a science, and yet we still have different philosophies within that science. Is that bizarre? We don't have different philosophies in, I don't know, physics or electronics, but we've got it with nutrition. But here's the real list of pro-inflammatory foods. And again, they're the same things that we talked about as being difficult earlier. Animal fat, animal protein, especially what comes out of the udder of a cow. If you're a baby calf, that's a great food. If you're anybody else, stay away. You don't want to fry anything or have foods cooked at a really high temperature because those create advanced glycation end products, which are called AGE, which is so fun because they are aging. We talked earlier about omega-3 fatty acids. You don't want to overdo the omega-6s, and they come mostly from these bottled oils that I'm pretty sure we're not going to be having anyway. Fast food, it's relative. It's never a good idea. But sometimes you're at a small airport and you make the best from what you got, or you're on a long road trip. And so Chipotle got some problems with some of their animal rights. The animal foods that they serve come from factory farms, it seems, even though they claim that they don't. But they also have wonderful access to a fully vegan burrito or a burrito bowl if you don't want to have the wheat. So you do the best you can. And trans fats, thank goodness, have been largely legislated out of the food system. So we don't have to worry too much about those anymore. But I know when I was young and vegan and certainly wasn't going to have butter, we had margarine, we had soft margarine, and we were told that was good. Well, we know now it was really bad. So we do the best we can with what we know, and we try to learn something every day. Refined sugar, not a great idea. Refined flour, not a great idea. These are all going to promote inflammation in the body. Now, inflammation when you skin your knee is great because that's what's going to help it heal. It's this chronic, long-term inflammation that can lead to the 4 top killers: heart disease, type 2 diabetes, many cancers, and Alzheimer's. Another role model, Mimi Kirk, won the PETA's Sexiest Vegan Over 50 contest at 70. She is now 85, and she has a wonderful cookbook called Live Raw and some other books too. So here are some anti-inflammatory foods. And aren't you shocked that I don't have like prime rib and seared salmon? These are anti-inflammatory foods from nature, from the plant kingdom. And they do all these other wonderful things for you too. We've already talked about berries, greens, cabbage family vegetables, celery, beets, walnuts, chia, flax seeds. And I said we'd talk a little bip more about spices. I love this picture. I was at a wonderful retreat at the Ayurveda health retreat in Alachua, Florida. And I took this picture in their kitchen. And I love the idea that the spices are in such big jars. Now, I do apologize that the salt is up front, and I know we're using very little, if any, salt, but I just still love the picture. So turmeric, if you've read Dr. Greger's books, How Not to Die and How Not to Age, you know, turmeric, you want to have a 1/4 teaspoon a day, I believe is what he recommends. I just make sure I have some every day, and I figure out ways. You put it in rice, you put it in stir fries, you just make your food and figure out a way to get it. Ginger is wonderful for digestion. It's anti-inflammatory. It's a very calming kind of food. Cloves are actually the highest anti-inflammatory spice there is. They're obviously, you're not going to have a lot of cloves or powdered cloves, but just a little bit. You get so much bang for your buck. Cinnamon, wonderful. You want to use Ceylon cinnamon or a Sri Lanka cinnamon if you're going to be having it every day for your health. If you're just going to be having for cookies at Christmas time, it doesn't matter. But in the cassia cinnamon, which is the most commonly available, there is a naturally occurring carcinogen, might not be problematic, but with the levels of cinnamon that a lot of us are using, like 1/2 teaspoon and maybe a little more even a day, you want to have the Ceylon cinnamon. And these other spices are amazing as well. More role models, Bob and Fran German. They are YouTube stars in their 80s and very dynamic. And I think you'd really like their YouTube show if you don't watch it already. Now, nutrient needs increase with age. And there is some controversy in our movement about supplements, which ones you need, how many. I don't think anybody argues about vitamin B12. I consider vitamin B12 the little tax I pay for the great privilege of getting to be plant-based. But even if I weren't plant-based, the academies of medicine would be telling me to supplement B12 simply because I'm over 50. So B12 is something we absolutely need, because even though we make it ourselves, it's not really a vitamin. We call it a vitamin, but it's made from bacteria. So you can make some in your mouth, in your gut, but you don't know if you're one of those people who can make enough until you end up with irreversible nerve damage. You don't want to do that. So vitamin B12. D3 used to be we couldn't get that in vegan form. Now we can. That's great. Now, maybe you don't need it. I mean, if you live in the sun and you're out a lot and you're a really good converter of that sunlight on your skin into the hormone of vitamin D. Again, it's called a vitamin, it's a hormone. Maybe you don't need to supplement, but do get your levels tested by your doctor and see what you need. Most doctors these days are recommending about 1,000 international units of vitamin D, because we just live this kind of anti-vitamin D life. We're indoors a lot. If we go outdoors, we're doing the sunblock, which of course I recommended. And, you know, people who are really pale like me use a lot of sunscreen, and people with darker skin have more melanin, so they're not getting the vitamin D action. So we should probably be supplementing that. Some of our doctors recommend supplementing EPA and DHA, which is the fully formed omega-3 fatty acids. Not everybody recommends this. You're going to have to do your own research. A lot of people take fish oil to get this, but the fish got it from algae, and the vegan sources come from algae. And here are some other nutrients that some people like to supplement. Magnesium, it's widely available in the plant kingdom, but sometimes we don't get enough. And it's very good for nerves and mood and migraine headache. A lot of migraine headache clinics actually do magnesium infusions, monthly injection. So zinc, for older people, especially that kind of don't want to eat anymore. You've heard probably your grandparents maybe say, oh, food just doesn't taste good anymore. Well, that can be a lack of zinc, and we can get that supplementally. The most plant-based source, highest source of zinc is pumpkin seeds, but you have to eat quite a few of them to get the RDA. Iodine, depending on where you live, if you live in a coastal area and get most of your produce locally, then there's probably enough iodine in the soil. But otherwise, for people who are not consuming fish, which I hope none of us are consuming, not only are we exhausting the oceans and just killing these creatures that have every right to live, but there's also so much arsenic, so much mercury, that for whatever some people believe is good about eating fish, we've just outgrown it. We're not in the era when that is the ethical or sensible thing to do. So they do put iodine in the regular salt, which probably most of us are not consuming, but we can consume sea vegetables. My favorite is dulse, but there are all kinds. There's dulse and there's alaria, and if you like seaweed, and if not, you may want to do a little bit of supplementing. Vitamin K2 helps calcium work. It's good for the bones. We always thought that because we get so much vitamin K1 in our leafy greens that we didn't need vitamin K2, but now again, it's an area of controversy. Some studies say different things, but it seems to be that the prevailing sentiment is that we do need to ingest it on purpose. So in terms of the plant world, you can get it in natto, which is a fermented soybean product that is popular in Japan. Definitely an acquired taste and an acquired smell. It's one of those things you either love it or hate it. I'm not crazy about it. So I do supplement zinc. And I love this company, Complement. They're the only company that I've ever been an affiliate for. You know, I went to Catholic school and they raised you to be really, don't be too pushy, don't sell things. But I believe so much in Complement. It's a company that's founded by plant-based people for plant-based people. So Matt Fraser, the no meat athlete, is part of that. Dr. Joel Kahn is part of that. And so if you do want to look at the complement products, the website is lovecomplement.com, and that's complement with an E. And if you want to get a 10% discount, you can put in my code, which is Main Street, all capital letters, because I'm the Main Street vegan. And there you go on that. Now, coming to our end point before we do Q&A, detoxification, the final element of the MEND program. Now, most people think that when we're talking about detoxification, it's like fasting. It's like going on a juice cleanse. And although that can be really fun and really cool, and I do it a couple of times a year, what I really want to talk about here is not toxifying ourselves so much to begin with. So there are all kinds of things that we can do to just keep from having so many chemicals in and on our bodies. So the Environmental Working Group, EWG.org, has all kinds of great information about the less toxic body care products, because we say, you know, oh, it just goes on top. Well, have you ever known anybody to use a patch to stop smoking? That goes on top, but that nicotine gets into their system. Everything we put on our body, a portion of it goes in our body. So you want to really have clean cosmetics, clean body care items. I was so excited when I learned about this Mineral Fusion lipstick. I don't work for them. I don't get anything out of telling you about them, but it's lipstick you could eat. And if you're somebody who wears lipstick, it's kind of good to know about. I found that out from the Environmental Working Group. If you are on medications, every year or two, sit down with a good pharmacist or somebody who can look at all these medications. Your doctor, if your doctor has time, maybe a physician's assistant, somebody who understands pharmacology and who can make sure that what you might have prescribed by different practitioners work together and that you're not having any sort of untoward drug action going on. And you want to be aware of the drugs that don't seem like drugs. So that's caffeine, you know, over-the-counter medications. In the old days of natural hygiene, wonderful, wonderful group of doctors. There's in the mid-1800s they started. Their organization has now become the National Health Association. Wonderful, wonderful group of people. But they used to say, you can ingest only two things, food or poison. And when you're taking a drug, and sometimes absolutely necessary, I totally get that, but the action that is desired from the pharmacological product is what happens when the body is trying to get rid of it. And so you really, really want to be careful of anything that you take into your body that is not a whole plant food. And, you know, it's never an exact science. So, for example, I talk about caffeine. I personally have a little caffeine. I like black tea. That gives me, wake up in the morning. If I have coffee, I'm just nervous. And I also have always been prone to fibrocystic breasts. And so caffeine is not good for that. I also flew with an ear infection 30 years ago. I have tinnitus, ringing of the ear. Caffeine is not good for that. So I stay away from it. And there's a lot of good information on this on Dr. Greger's latest book, How Not to Age. There's a lot of good stuff about coffee too, because it is, after all, a bean. And if you don't have a contraindication, then maybe you want to enjoy your coffee. I mean, they're actually saying that for Parkinson's, for example, it's therapeutic. So it's never like, don't ever do this, always do that. Well, maybe don't ever eat animals, always eat plants. But other than that, you know, we can have a little bit of leeway. You want to breathe really good air, which largely means opening a window, because even if you live in New York City, the outside air is cleaner than the inside air. So I make it a little ritual in the morning. Since I do yoga in the morning, and part of that is breathing practice, I just open my windows. I leave them open, depending on the weather, 15 to 30 minutes to just kind of air things out. And then, of course, if I get a chance to go to the beach or somewhere wonderful, I don't say no. You want to sleep well. That helps you detox. We talked about eating your water with the fresh fruits and vegetables. Fiber, of course, is going to help your elimination system work well. I did not put in here oil pulling, which is a wonderful detox suggestion that comes from Ayurveda. And that just means that after you brush your teeth, you swish in your mouth some sesame oil is the classic in Ayurveda. It could be olive oil, it could be coconut oil, although I don't know why you'd have coconut oil around because you don't certainly want to ingest it. It's very high in saturated fat, one of the few high saturated fat plant foods. But all you're going to do with this oil is squish it in your mouth, kind of like mouthwash, except you're going to do it for 5 minutes. Then spit it out, then rinse your mouth and go on about your day. And the teaching is that this is a great way not only to reduce the bacteria level in your mouth, which of course is systemic, but can actually help with heart disease prevention and some other thing because it helps keep that mouth really clean. And then you want to laugh. You want to find something funny. Do you ever look at like teenagers and it's like, why are they laughing all the time? What's so funny? You know, when your body is working well and the world looks fresh and new, everything is fun and a lot of things are funny. So we need to find things that are funny all our lives. So tongue scraping, you get a little stainless steel or copper tongue scraper. Most drugstores have them these days, certainly health food stores, Indian markets. And scrape sounds so harsh. It's very gentle. Just 3 or 4 times over your tongue to get rid of that little sweater that kind of develops on there overnight. In Ayurveda, that's called ama or toxins. It's a good habit to get a really good amount of water first thing in the morning because you've dehydrated all night long. And if you put lemon in there, I know some people don't want to drink lemon water because of their teeth, but if you rinse really well, I think it's okay, or just skip the lemon. You know, everything is personal. Sweat, sweat with exercise, sweat in a sauna, dry skin brushing before a shower. We talked about that dry skin that we can get on our legs and arms, and that's a good thing to do too. Talked about open windows, pranayama, that means breathing exercises. There's a wonderful YouTube channel. It's Shivananda Yoga Center in Gurugram, India. But if you just put in Shivananda, which is spelled like Sivananda, Sivananda, yoga, and then pranayama, it's a week's worth. It's like a course. It's a course you could pay a lot of money for. A wonderful pranayama course, free on YouTube, and teaches you how to do these breathing exercises if you don't have a yoga teacher of your own. Massage, reflexology, manual lymph drainage. As you know, the heart is pumping. Your circulation system has this wonderful helper every day of your life. The lymphatic system is like orphaned. It's like, who's helping me? Well, you have to. And so to get your lymphatic fluids flowing, which is helping your body detox, all exercise is great. Bouncing on a mini trampoline or bouncing on one of those big medicine balls is really helpful. And then you want your home to be non-toxic. You want to clear out the toxic waste dump under your sink and use either natural products or just stuff you've got in the house. You can clean a lot of stuff with club soda, baking soda, white vinegar, and you save a lot of money besides. So you got more for organic produce. Another role model, Stella was my very first yoga teacher. I moved to London on my 18th birthday and discovered Stella, and she changed my life. She's 98. She still teaches a senior class in chair yoga and walks up 4 flights of stairs to get home. Wonderful. I'm dedicating my new book to her, which is this, Age Like a Yogi, A Heavenly Path to a Dazzling Third Act. It is on pre-order, and if you wish to pre-order this book that will actually not be out until January, but it's available now on all the booksellers. And you can see here how to get a free exclusive seminar for pre-order people. This is really a favor to any author. You know, you don't have to buy my book if you don't think that would be something that would help you. I think it would help you. It's my best work. But anybody that you like who's an author, if you can do the pre-orders, that helps to get them onto the bestseller lists, and it helps to just push that work out there. So in a crowded and competitive world, that's what us authors are doing to get noticed and to get our work that we really believe will make a difference for others out into the world. So I'd appreciate if you want to do that. And then I could actually get to meet you on our webinar later. These are ways to find me, but you can just Google Victoria Moran and I'll pop up. And you know what? Life is short. Play with your dog or your kids or your grandkids, or just go out and play, because life is supposed to be lived. And in this wonderful plant-based world we have, we can live well and live well for a long time. So thank you all so much. It seems to me that we have 14 minutes left for Q&A. You play with your piggies, Laura. Oh my gosh, that is so cool. I love pigs. Going to a farm sanctuary, the baby pigs are always the best, but everybody's good. So
thank you very much, Victoria, for that great presentation. So we actually have 24 minutes left, or 20.
Oh, we do? Great.
Yeah. So with that, we'll begin our Q&A session. And thank you for sharing all that information. Obviously all the whole presentation, but all the information about how people can get in contact with you. So that's very helpful. And your books are available through our bookstore, therealtruthabout.health.com, as well as other platforms. So there they are, if anyone's interested in getting Victoria's books. And now we'll begin the Q&A part of the presentation. And I just want to let the audience know that if they would like to ask a question, they can raise their hand in Zoom. We don't take questions from the chat. John has put the details of how to raise your hand in Zoom into the chat, so you can review that if you have a question for Victoria. And so one of the things that I think people struggle with as they're beginning is really just how to get started, right? So, and I know that it can be very overwhelming. You gave a tremendous amount of information right now. What are the few things, like the simple things, to ease someone into this lifestyle?
You start with something. What are you willing to do today? And what is exciting to you? So for me, the idea of beautiful food is really helpful. I was having a very stressful time many years ago. I was already plant-based, and I decided to move to the country and realized I had no skills for living in the country. But the first time I went to the supermarket and I put all my wonderful plant-based foods in the basket, and the woman just stopped the conveyor belt, and she looked at me and she said, "I've had this job for 15 years, but I have never seen such pretty groceries." And I thought, what an interesting phrase. Pretty groceries makes pretty people, healthy people, people who live well. So I think that's a great place to start. Now, maybe you just want to colorify your diet. So just think about adding more greens and berries. Try some kind of new pretty food. And then when you're thinking about the other side of the thing, because what makes this whole food plant-based diet so powerful and what makes it work is two things. On the one hand, we've got the pretty groceries. We've got the fruits, the vegetables, and the kind of back. I think the fruits and vegetables are like the all-stars. It's sort of like, imagine a big gala musical, and you got your leads out in front, maybe your romantic leads singing to each other. And then you've got all the dancing boys and dancing girls. So that's going to be the grains and the legumes. Very important. I know Dr. Greger is talking in his latest book about that eating more beans is one of the best things that Americans could do. There was another big study that said eating more fruit is what we need to do. So we need more plants. Those are the healers. But the other thing that's going on is we're not having the animal foods and the processed foods. And that's where you're going to get more arguments from people out in the world who see things differently. And they're going to tell you, you know, you need the egg white omelet, you need the salmon, whatever. This world is very big and very complex, and people look at it from different points of view. But the bulk of the solid science that is not coming from commercial interests is that plants are where it's at, and you need to push out the other stuff. So when you get rid of the animal foods, you're getting rid of all cholesterol, almost all saturated fat, which is found in large quantities only in animal foods and tropical oils, the coconut oil we talked about, palm oil, all that stuff you want out. And it's devoid of fiber and full of hormones and all kinds of things that are given to the animals. And I personally believe that the fear chemicals that go into those animals at the time of slaughter, I spent a day in a slaughterhouse. You don't want to do that. A horrible experience, and yet I'm so glad I did it, because now I know firsthand what goes on there. And those chemicals, all that adrenaline that goes into that animal at the time of death, you don't want that. And as far as I'm concerned, I don't want the karma of that. And it's so interesting. Sometimes when you're around a lot of older vegans, and you know, it's not 100% across the board. This is not a panacea. This is not a way for to have eternal life. But generally speaking, older vegans do really well. We tend to look pretty good. And it's this thing of you're kind of looking around this group and it's like, wait a minute, what are we doing? And we're doing all this good, healthy stuff, of course. And I happen to believe we're getting a sort of little cosmic help, because we're not leading to the destruction and the suffering of these animals.
So yeah, so someone like Betty White, people like, you know, who you watch are the vegans, and then they're wildly healthy, live to, you know, a really ripe age.
Yes.
Is something that is inspiring for sure. So you mentioned finding, you know, like you mentioned studies, specifically non-commercially funded studies. Are there any specific studies that have helped you come to the conclusions that that you have in your books? And what are those studies?
You know, I'm not a scientist, so I get my studies largely secondhand from people like Dr. Greger.
Hmm.
I am someone who lives life to the fullest. I've always been fascinated by nutrition. As I said, my dad was a doctor, and I kept trying to cure myself as a kid. So the one study that I talked about with meditation, that's probably my favorite, because that is 12 years of youthfulness for sitting quietly twice a day. So I think your more scientific presenters will be able to cite studies better than me. For me, it's more experience. It's that I was really sick when I was 20, and now I'm 74 and I'm really well, and I don't take any medication, and I don't have the diagnoses that people in my family had years before this. And again, with a caveat, that doesn't mean that at some point I won't. You know, it's age happens to people. And at a certain point, you come to see, okay, I've been here a lot longer than I'm going to be here. So if I speak for you next year and I happen to need a medication at that time, I'm not going to be ashamed of it. But I do think it's pretty cool that with this lifestyle and this diet, there aren't a lot of people at 74 who are not on a single prescription drug. And I'm pretty proud of that.
No, that's great. So you talked about sunscreen, and you know, there's, you know, especially in this community, there's a lot of, I guess, controversy over sunscreen. And
Yeah.
you also mentioned, you know, use the analogy of putting things on your skin getting absorbed into your body. Use the
Mm-hmm.
analogy of the nicotine patch.
Mm-hmm.
What sunscreens do you recommend that
Yeah.
aren't toxic, right?
Right.
Because it is going to go into your body.
Mm-hmm.
And how does then we have the whole vitamin D thing. And if you're blocking the sun from getting in, into your body,
Mhm.
you're gonna have lower vitamin D production. So if you can hit
Right.
those points.
Yes. And I think, again, it depends on your priorities. I mean, obviously, we need vitamin D and we need to get it somewhere. But it seems that for many people, it's really hard to get from the sun. Even if you live north of Atlanta, if you go out and run and get sun and then you shower immediately, that's going to cost you some. Sunblock, being dark skinned, all these things are going to impede the vitamin D. So I find it easier for me to just supplement. And there are some people that I know who have been around this movement for many, many years. And again, in the old days of natural hygiene, they were big on sunlight. And sunlight is important. It's important for your mood. It's important for everything. But whether you want to expose your skin to it, I think is a personal choice. I'm a little bit vain. And as an ethical vegan, I want people to want to do what I do. And having skin that doesn't have wrinkles and spots and things that are the after effects of a lot of sun exposure, I think makes me a better advocate for what I want to do than if I was somebody who had lain on the beach for the past 60 years. So I'd use always non-toxic sunscreen, non-toxic everything. And so in the case of sunscreen, that means a barrier method, like a zinc oxide. So it more sits on top of your skin to keep the rays from getting in. Some of the chemical kinds, actually act from within. So you don't want that. So I only get the things that environmental working groups approve of, sold in the health food stores, works for me. But if you love being out in the sun and you don't do it to excess, you don't burn, you see a dermatologist, you get yourself checked and make sure any little marks aren't going to turn into something awful, then by all means, follow your own heart and your own good sense. Because there are some things I'll fight for. I'll fight for veganism because that is worth fighting for. But if I want to use sunscreen and you don't, I'm not going to fight for that, because you have as much right to choose what you don't do as I do to choose what I do. And hopefully we can all be together in this, respect one another, and learn from one another, because sometimes we change. We'll do something for a while and then we'll say, oh, you know what? I think it's going to work better that way. So we do the other thing.
So in one of your books, you touched upon the connection between veganism and mental health. Can you expand on that relationship?
Yeah, I believe that when you're putting good out into the world, it makes you feel better about yourself. And it's so hard to feel like you're really doing a lot of good in the world because life is so busy. I mean, just getting to the email and the Facebook messages, it's like another part-time job for a lot of people. And so all the things that we might want to do in terms of volunteering, we look at people who have been blessed with great wealth and they can do all sorts of amazing philanthropic things. And it's like, oh, I wish I could do that. But you know what we can do is we can be vegan. And when you do that, so much of a ripple effect happens. It's absolutely spectacular. You are saving the lives of actual animals every single day and every single year. You are freeing up foodstuffs to feed people in impoverished parts of the world. You are stemming climate change. We know that if all transportation, all carbon, usage of fossil fuels ceased, which of course is not going to do, but hypothetically, it would take 100 years for those greenhouse gases to leave the atmosphere. If we got rid of animal agriculture, which is probably not going to happen overnight either, but probably more likely than getting rid of all fossil fuels, 10 years. And we might actually have 10 years. We don't have 100. So simply eating 3 meals a day, which you're doing anyway, can do so much good, not only for yourself, but also for others, that it's just going to make you feel better about who you are. And when you feel better about who you are, you're going to take better care of yourself. and everything is going to elevate. Not to say that there isn't a time to see a therapist, to, work with what's going on internally. But for most people who just kind of get the blues, this is a wonderful way to live.
Great, thank you. So I'm going to turn over to our audience to ask a few questions. So we have Cheryl Littleton. Please state where you're from and ask your question.
Yeah, hi. I've enjoyed this so much. Thank you. I am in Olney, Maryland, and I didn't catch quick enough the yoga breathing that you referred to, the site.
Yes,
And I tried to look it up and I couldn't find it.
Okay, I put it in the chat. Can you see the chat, Cheryl?
Sorry, I didn't go back there.
That's okay.
Okay, I'm back there now.
Yeah. So, and I'll just talk about it while you're looking. It's Shivananda, which sounds like it has an H in it, but it doesn't. It's Sivananda, yoga, pranayama, that means breathing exercises, and it's from Guragan, India, Guragon. And just putting all those search words into YouTube will do it for you. If you can't find it, just email me, victoria@victoriamoran.com, and I'll give you the exact link. I do this series about once a month. It's really wonderful.
Oh, perfect. All right. Thank you. Yeah, I think I've got it, but thank you so much. Appreciate that.
Wonderful. Thanks for being here.
Right, perfect. So thank you for that question, Cheryl. And our next question is going to be from DA. Oops, hold on, I think I unmuted the wrong person. Give me 1 second here. And DA, go ahead and ask your question and state where you're from.
Thank you so much. I'm also from Maryland, and my question is, can you suggest a vegetable broth recipe? I was told by someone I know who knows Ayurvedic medicine that if you have problems digesting food, another option would be to do a vegetable broth, and that would be like 4 or 5 hours of cooking, and then you would actually consume the broth.
Right.
So I was wondering if you had any suggestions on what vegetables would be good. And then secondly, you mentioned vitamin D and K2. There's a controversy whether you should combine K2 with vitamin D. And then finally, I was told black pepper with turmeric helps absorb it. So those are my thoughts.
Cool. Okay. I'm totally with you on the black pepper with the turmeric. I'm not good at remembering numbers, but the percentage by which the black pepper increases the antioxidant absorption in the body is really big. And to also have the turmeric with a food with some fat in it, like some avocado or some nuts, is another way for the turmeric to be even more beneficial. And then you were asking about K2 and vitamin D. Excuse me. There's always going to be controversy, especially when we get into supplements. Less controversy on the food, maybe. So I take it together. I take the K2 and the vitamin D. I have not experienced or been told by any of my practitioners that I shouldn't do that. And so, it's kind of the Wild West when it comes to supplements. You just have to read and consult people that you trust and come to your own decision. And the great thing about supplements and food is it's not like drugs. It's not like something that's going to be really dangerous. There might be a more effective and a less effective way to do something, but the fact that I take vitamin D and K2 and maybe you don't, it doesn't mean that either one of us is going to run into some horrible problem because of that. So I think we really need to kind of let things level out and kind of not sweat the small stuff and just do what makes the most sense to us until something else makes the most sense. And also, if you have somebody in your life that you really trust, I'm really lucky because I've been in this movement for a very long time. And so all these great plant-based doctors, I can just call them up, and I understand that is a privilege that most people don't have. But there are a lot of great ways to get this work. I mean, if you can't call up Dr. Greger, you can read How Not to Die, and it's almost as good. So good luck with what you figure out on that. And if you learn something fascinating, please let me know, because I would like to know it too. And now you ask your number one question. I forgot what it is.
All right, let me unmute him again here.
Okay.
1 second here. And Okay, DA, oops,
Yes.
go
Yes,
ahead.
my number one question concerned vegetable broth. I was told by an Ayurvedic
Okay, I remember. Okay.
which vegetables would be the best in cooking like 4 or 5 hours. She said that also would help, not just what you said about juicing for people who have a hard time digesting raw foods.
Yeah. So the cool thing about vegetable broth is you can put anything in there. You can put your scraps in there as long as you've washed them. So a lot of people like to eat the broccoli stalks, and there's a lot of nutrients in there. And some people, it's just like, no, broccoli is supposed to be flowers. I throw those stalks away. Don't throw them away. Just store them in your fridge until you're ready to make broth. So your broccoli stalks, your what you chop off the two ends of the carrot, all the stuff that you're not going to be using in your regular dishes can go into the vegetable broth. There's really no vegetable that shouldn't be there. There are a few of those cabbage family vegetables, like basic cabbage, that might smell a little funny. They have that odor when you cook them, especially for a long time, but it's not harmful. It's just not, as lovely as when you walk in and smell some things. But I mean, potato peelings, as long as they don't have any eyes in them, which are toxic, you don't want to do that. But basically anything you throw away from the vegetables. And then if you don't have enough, scraps to make your broth and you want to use some actual vegetables, I would just say use some cheap ones, because you're not going to be getting the actual vegetable. You're not going to be getting the fiber. You're not going to be eating it. So things like carrots and sweet potatoes and squash, all that stuff is really good. And then some of those greens that are, really tougher and thicker, like mature kale. Like I usually buy baby kale because I just want to steam it quickly or make a salad. But the mature kale that can just simmer, and all the kale stalks that we throw away when we're going to use the kale for salad or cooking, that can all go into the broth.
Great. So thank you for that question, DA. We've got one more audience question. Cheryl has another question for you, and we have about 2 more minutes, so if we can keep that brief. And go ahead, Cheryl.
Hi, yeah, thank you. I was just wondering if you had any thoughts on sleep. Maybe I missed it, but particularly having practical ways other than the typical hygiene stuff we all hear about, how to promote better deep sleep in particular.
Ayurveda has a suggestion that would appear to make no sense, but it really does. And that is to, I'm sorry, I'm trying to do two things at once. Somebody wanted that link to the Shivananda. Please just write to me, victoria@victoriamoran.com, because I'm not going to be able to put that link in for you while I'm talking to Cheryl. So, what are we talking about, Cheryl?
Sleep.
Okay, so warm sesame oil, rub it onto your feet when you go to bed, put some loose socks on, and it shouldn't help. It helps amazingly. And then the other stuff is just your good sense. Get your sunlight in the morning. If you live in, some foggy kind of area where you don't get very much sun, get one of those seasonal active disorder lights and have it on you 15 minutes in the early part of the day. This is going to help your whole melatonin production system, and your sleep is going to be better. You want to sleep in a dark, cool, quiet room. Charge your electronics somewhere else. If you have to wear a sleep mask to get the dark, do that. And finally, the most important thing is to sleep on a schedule. According to Ayurveda, that's going to bed right around 10 or a little bit before, getting up right around 6 or a little before. And for some people, that sounds impossible. But once you get started and once you do it, and it's like, oh, but I don't go to bed that early. What if I can't fall asleep? There are all kinds of wonderful like sleep meditations and things that you can find on YouTube. But if you just get into the habit of you wind down around 9 o'clock, no electronics after 9 o'clock, and you just read and just do your little grooming stuff, turn your lights off at 10, and get up at 6 o'clock, even if you don't feel like it, your entire life will change.
Great. Thank you so much for the presentation and of the answers you provided for the audience. If we could unmute the audience so the audience can show their appreciation.
And do my conference.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh,
No, I'm
So
fine.
much.
Thank you.
Information.
Love you.
Thank you.
It's a webinar. You're listening to it.